What's going on, guys? Billy here, and in the past week I've logged almost 6 hours of flight time on my DJI Mavic 2 Pro, and in that time I've shot a ton of footage. Now here are some of my favorite shots from the past week, just to show as examples before we dive into the camera and gimbal settings that I'm currently using. Now in my opinion, these are the best settings to use to achieve cinematic looking footage, and I'm really going to focus on the gimbal settings at the end because I think that they are commonly looked over. Now the footage you are watching was shot in the D-Log M color profile, so I added a color grade to give you a sense of what the final product will look like when using these camera settings. Anyway, enough rambling from me. Let's jump into the DJI Go application, where the first thing I want to check out is the camera settings. Now from this home transmissions feed, to get to the camera settings, what we want to hit is the 3 lines on the right side of the screen, just underneath of the shutter and the record button. Now on this very first tab of 3, we can deal with our exposure settings, and I can't tell you guys exactly what to use because your values are going to be different every single time you head out. It really depends on what the lighting is going to be like. So what I like to do, kind of my rule of thumb, is first of all, set my shutter speed. I've got it double my frame rate. That's the rule that you want to follow. So if you're going to be shooting 4K at 30 like I am, you're going to have a shutter speed of 60. But if you're shooting at, say, 2.7K, 60 frames per second, you want your shutter speed to be 120. So I've got my shutter speed set, and then from there, I want to dial in the exposure value using the adjustable aperture, which is new to the Mavic series with the Mavic 2 Pro. Now, right now, I'm at 2.8. This seems to be a little bit too bright with me. The exposure value is coming in at plus 1.0, so I'll bump this up to 3.2, and that seems to do the trick. Now it looks a lot better. One more rule of thumb, I like to never touch the ISO. I leave it at 100, and when I'm flying at nighttime, I will bump it up if I need to, but honestly, ISO just adds unneeded grain into your image. Sometimes I might go up to 200 if I'm shooting like a building that has a bunch of shadows on it and I need just a little bit extra brightness, but for the most part, I leave the ISO alone. And also, when setting exposure value, I'd highly recommend getting used to using manual camera settings. Moving on to the second tab of the camera settings marked by the camera icon. This is where I believe a lot of the more important camera settings lie, just because it really changes how your video is going to come out on the other end, what it's going to look like. Now at the top, we've got video size, and I always shoot in 4K high quality at 30 frames per second. It's a more narrow field of view at 55 degrees, whereas full field of view, 4K full field of view, gives you the full 75-degree field of view of the camera itself. I think that being zoomed in a little bit makes it look more cinematic, and also it's higher quality. The image is actually sharper, and if you guys want to, I made a video comparing full field of view and high quality. I'll leave that link down in the description. I definitely encourage that you check it out either after or right now while you're watching the video, just because it really does detail the differences between high quality and full field of view. At the end of the day, I shoot in high quality. I think it gives you a sharper image, and also that narrow field of view just looks awesome. I also shoot in 30 frames per second. That's just my choice. Next up, we've got our video format, and this really all depends on what you're going to be editing with. So if you're editing with a Mac, you're going to shoot or you're going to use .mov, and then if you're using a PC or Windows to edit, you're going to use .mp4. It's all about compatibility, so choose that wisely. Next up, we've got white balance, and I usually just bounce back and forth between sunny and cloudy. Never do auto. Your white balance is going to continue to change throughout your shoot. It's going to be an absolute pain to color grade at the end, just because you're going to have different white balances all over the place. You can always set your custom white balance if that's something that you prefer, but in my opinion, switching back and forth from sunny and cloudy on the fly really does help out a lot, and also you keep that same white balance throughout all of your shots, making color grading a lot easier. Next up, we've got style settings, and I've used +0 across the board for my whole entire life when flying drones. You've got your sharpness here, you've got your contrast, as well as your saturation, but with the Mavic 2 Pro, I've been playing around with these settings, trying to see what's the best, and all I did was just do +1 on the sharpness. I found the Mavic 2 Pro camera might be a little bit soft for my liking, so adding that digital sharpness just by +1 definitely helps. Moving on, we've got our color. Now I shoot in D-Log M all of the time. My very first day, I was shooting in normal just to get some test footage. Here's a little example of what normal looks like. It looks great. I mean, you got the colors there. It's easy to share right off of the SD card. Now here's a sample clip of D-Log M. It's very flat, it's very plain. There's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done to it, but once you add that color grade as I overlay this, it looks amazing. Also, when shooting in D-Log M, you get to take advantage of 10-bit color as well as HDR video. I mean, you can just edit this so well. There's just so many possibilities. So I'd always recommend shooting in D-Log M, but if you're somebody who doesn't like to color grade your footage and you just want to share it, then normal also looks great. But D-Log, definitely the way to go. Now next up, we've got our camera video coding. if you try to do H.264 while shooting on D-Log-M, it says that it's not supported. So I shoot in H.265, it's a newer codec, it's a little bit more efficient. In the very beginning, I tried shooting H.265 like 2 years ago on my Phantom 4 Pro, and Final Cut Pro, when I was editing it, did not like it. So I was just shooting in H.264, but now with D-Log-M, I shoot H.265. I don't have much of a chance, but my editing software now is fine with it. It's been updated. I would recommend shooting H.265, maybe try shooting a couple of sample clips and importing them and see how your editing software works with it. And if your editing software is a little bit older or you haven't updated it, try H.264 if H.265 doesn't work, and you should be fine. Now before I go moving on to the third tab, I quickly want to just go over a recap of this second tab because, as I said, it is very important as it does shape how your video comes out on the end. So starting up at the top, video size, 4K, high quality, 30 frames per second. Doing high quality with that tighter field of view is really going to give you more cinematic looking footage. It looks incredible. Video format all depends on what you're going to be editing with. .mov for Mac, .mp4 for PC or Windows. White balance, I always set this to either cloudy or sunny depending on the lighting conditions outside. You can set your own custom white balance if you'd like, but at all costs, stay away from automatic white balance. Next up, style settings. It's just +1 on the sharpness. That's the one with the triangle all the way to the left. Let's see, color, D-Log-M across the board. I'm a big fan of D-Log-M. Looks great coming out of the camera, and it looks even better when you color grade it. The possibilities are limitless. Finally, camera video coding. Try H.265. I use H.265. It really just all depends on how these files are stored and encoded. It doesn't change the quality of them. So H.265 I use. It seems to work well on my Mac, but try that, see which one works best for you. So hopefully now that all that information is drilled into your brain, it's finally time to move on to the third tab marked by the gear icon. And this entire tab, this entire section of camera settings is just a lot of miscellaneous stuff. So starting at the top, we've got our histogram. I've got it turned on. This allows me to determine my exposure value on the fly. It's nice to look at, to get a detailed look, make sure I'm not too overexposed or underexposed, and it's that box I'm dragging around. So it doesn't really get in the way. You can move it around if you have to, and I always have it. I think that it works great. Head LEDs, auto turn off. I've got this turned on so that the front LEDs, the front red LEDs, will turn off whenever I'm shooting a photo or video. And this is especially needed when flying at nighttime and taking photos and just images in general. Because if you don't turn it off, then that red glow is going to show up on the top of the frame in any of the pictures or videos you shoot, and everything's going to be ruined. Trust me, it just save the headache and turn that on. Lock gimbal when capture, that has to do with photos. I keep this turned on so that when you go and take photos, it's like an extra layer of stabilization and the gimbal locks so that there's no shake or no vibration and there's going to be no blur in your pictures. Turn that on. It definitely helps when shooting photos, although I'm not much of a big photo taker. Enable AFC mode. AFC stands for auto focus continuous, so the drone's camera is going to continue to stay in focus. I know a lot of people seem to like to use manual focus, although when I'm flying my drone, controlling the camera and trying to line up shots, I don't want to have to worry about anything else, especially focusing the camera, so I just let it do it for me. It seems to do a really good job at it, so I'm just going to keep that on. Overexposed, this is going to show you the zebra patterns on the actual screen. You guys might be familiar with this if you used any DSLR camera. I find it annoying when I'm flying, having all these lines all over my screen, especially during the daytime. I like to keep this turned off. Sometimes if I want to quickly check before I fly, make sure all of my exposure settings are set right, I'll quickly turn it on and say, okay, that looks good, and then turn it off. Overall, kind of annoying to fly with. I like to keep that turned off. Auto-sync HD photo, I've got that turned on, so any photos I take automatically sync in high definition in their fullest quality, or not their fullest quality, but in a high definition to my cell phone, to my mobile device. Next up, video caption, turned off. Grid, I've got this turned off as well, although some people seem to swear by this. I think that grid lines can be done. I think that it doesn't take up too much room. But grid plus diagonals is just an absolute mess. Like, there's so much going on, I can barely see what's behind it. So grid lines works. I like to kind of put this on as soon as I get up in the air, make sure that my horizon line is level, make sure that nothing is totally out of whack, and then I turn it off, as that is just annoying to me. So now, in terms of center points, again, you might find this annoying because it's something on your screen. I don't. I think it's small. I think it's perfect right in the middle, and it really does help you line up some shots. If you're trying to do a point of interest, you can make sure that that center point is always on the middle of your point of interest. If you're trying to track an object, you're able to keep that center point on the object. Make sure you've got it always in the frame. It really does help, and I swear by the center point. So make sure to turn it on, and you're not going to thank, or you're definitely going to thank me. You're not going to be sad that you did. Let's see, moving on to anti-flicker. This I can't turn on. I don't know if you guys are having the same problem, but with the past couple of drones, I haven't been able to turn this on. So let me know if you guys have gotten around this down in the comments section. File index mode. I've got this set to continuous. So the difference between reset and continuous, right? Whenever you shoot a video or a photo, it comes out in a file name that's DJI underscore, and then it's like 0001 is going to be your first photo, and then 0002 is going to be your next image. Now, if you want that to reset, you can hit reset. So every single time that you pop the SD card back in the drone, once it's all been cleared, it's going to restart and start counting from 0001. But if you go to continuous, it's never going to reset. It's just going to continue counting numbers all the way up. I like continuous because if you go to dump all your footage multiple times, you could accidentally overwrite certain files that you don't want to overwrite because they now all have the same file name. Also, I think it's cool to take a look at some of these files like DJI 0910 and be like, wow, I've taken 910 pictures and videos and stuff like that. So I like to have this set to continuous. Moving down, peak focus threshold. This is going to show you what's in focus, what's not in focus. So the little red lines around all the objects shows what's in focus. Now, if we go to low, it's kind of going to be less strict and show what's sort of in focus and what's definitely in focus, but I like to know what is definitely in focus. So I go and I hit high. Also low, all those red marks all over the place kind of get annoying, kind of get in the way. And low is kind of like a good mixture. It's like, okay, that's what's in focus, I can see, but also it doesn't take up the entire screen. Next up, let's see, we've got save original. I've got it turned on. I don't take too many panoramas or hyperlapses. Again, we're talking about cinematic footage in this video, but I've got this set to save original just so that I have all the originals of panoramas and hyperlapses and I can edit them later by myself on my computer if I'd like, rather than the DJI Go doing all the editing for me, the DJI Go app. Let's see, so that is basically it. In terms of storage location, up to you. I like to save the internal storage for like a backup, so in case I'm shooting and I run out of storage, I can say, oh, I want this one more shot, let me just save it to the internal storage. But other than that, I try to put it all on the micro SD card slot. But yeah, I think that is about it in terms of the camera settings. Now let's sort of switch gears here and jump into the gimbal settings, which, as I said in the beginning of this video, I really want to focus on. You can have the most beautiful looking 4K color graded video that you want, but really it's nothing without good, precise gimbal movement and movement of the drone also, but we're only going to be talking about gimbal movement in this video. Now, in order to access these gimbal settings from this home transmission feed, we want to tap on the three dots in the top right corner, bringing us to the general settings, and then we want to tap on the camera icon on the left side, bringing us to the gimbal settings. Now, for our gimbal mode, we want to set this to follow. FPV, it's going to behave like an FPV drone where the camera kind of banks with the drone. But for follow, it's going to give us nice cinematic video. It's going to follow the horizon line. It's going to be level. So at the end of the day, just select follow. Next up, we've got our advanced settings. And within here, we can really tweak how the gimbal moves and how fast it moves, how slow it moves, what we want it to do. So with max gimbal pitch speed, this all has to do with how fast the gimbal moves up and down, right? So if we say set this all the way up to 100 and we go ahead and we watch an example, it is just entirely too fast. Like, there's no way you can cinematically control this to get cinematic video. I mean, really, it's just way too much. I understand if you want to use this for search and rescue, maybe surveying, to just, you know, have that gimbal move up and down quickly. Now, if we switch gears here, right, and we go all the way down to 1, it is then entirely too slow. Like, you really can't even use the gimbal at this point. I don't know any uses for anyone that would want to use one. Hey, if you guys use one for your gimbal's pitch speed, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to shoot you out. But what I like to do is set my max gimbal pitch speed to 30 just because I feel like it's on the slower side. I can still move it pretty fast, look where I want to. I feel like I'm in control, and I think that 30 is right there, perfect, on the money. Moving on, we've got gimbal pitch smoothness, which has to deal with how smooth the gimbal will come to a start or stop. So let's say we bring this all the way down to 0, and we go and we start moving the gimbal, and we come to a stop. It comes to a very abrupt stop, and that's hard to get this cinematic footage that we're looking to get. What I like to do whenever I'm coming up and doing a reveal shot is slowly bring the gimbal up and then have it slowly come to a stop. I mean, you don't want the gimbal moving at all times, and if you've got it set to 0, there's no way that you can have the gimbal come to a stop smoothly unless you really know how to control that gimbal wheel on the back. Now, if we go ahead, switch gears, and go all the way up to 30, right, it is just takes so long to get started, and it just takes so long to stop. I mean, again, it's extreme. It's way too slow. It's way too smooth. So what I do is I set it right in the middle to 15. This in combination with a gimbal pitch speed of 30 and then the smoothness at 15, I think just makes for the perfect combination. I feel like this is more personal preference. It depends on what you're used to, but I definitely go on the slower side so that you can get the slower gimbal movement, making things look a lot more cinematic. I guess before I end this video, I should quickly go over what enable upwards gimbal tilt limits at 30 degrees means. With this on, you can essentially just look upwards an extra 30 degrees, so instead of the camera and gimbal coming up to a stop at 0 degrees pointing straight forward, you can look up an extra 30 degrees. But with that on, be careful because you can get the propellers in the shot. But guys, I guess that basically wraps up this video for my cinematic gimbal and camera settings. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give me a like and also comment what you think of my camera settings. I feel like this is like the standard for camera settings. There are a few things that I prefer over other people, but if you're looking for cinematic camera settings, I don't think you're going to talk to anyone who disagrees with slow gimbal movements and also shooting in D-Log-N with this new Mavic 2 Pro. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, again, of my camera settings, but also I'd love to know what you overall think of the Mavic 2 Pro. I'm having a blast with it. Again, in this 1 week, I've put on almost 6 hours of flight time. Like, I'm just having so much fun. But guys, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Hope you're having fun flying your Mavic 2 Pro. And as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.